in my opinion, by virtue of the manufacturing consent of the last 40, 50 years, the polarization and tribalism of media. Americans are, I'm not calling us all dummies, but a lot of people outside our circles that are, a little bit wiser and have a brighter political acumen are very susceptible to war, the drumming for war and beating our chests. And they see Biden, sanctions and daily speeches and this and that. And it kind of makes them lose sight of, he hasn't delivered on any of his promises. In fact, he's actually moonwalked faster than Michael Jackson away from his promises. So I think, does Biden want to continue the war on to maybe save the Democrats in November? I don't know. Can I say, is that evil? I don't know. Can I rule it out? Can I rule it out that he's that evil? No, I cannot.
I think it's wag the dog on for both countries. It's almost like if I didn't know any better, I would think that Biden and Putin got together and both thought, yeah, your economy's in the crap, or my ratings are really low. Maybe we got to do something. And it's like, that's what, I'm not saying it's not happening. I know it's happening, but I do think that there is definitely the fact that his ratings are going up. They know that. That's what Wag the Dog is. That's the whole point.
And for anybody who's never seen Wag the Dog, it took me a couple of years to see it, but I finally did. And I'm like, yeah, this all makes sense.
But
and that's what
it's both countries, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the propaganda in Russia is off the charts. They have banned apparently Instagram, and I think TikTok now is banned in Russia. So both countries, I mean, we're talking about two of the three global superpowers. And meanwhile, China's just sitting there like this. I mean, they are loving this.
Well, we're self-censoring, and then we're doing it here. We're censoring. Authoritarianism is on the rise. It's happening in both places. So it almost seems like it serves to benefit both Russia and us.
And that was always the argument, regarding RT America. And like I said, we had Lee Camp on the podcast the other day, and whether or not you agree with RT America being state-sponsored Russian news, yeah, they're very likely, if ever, going to criticize Putin. We get that. That's not good. But they are going to be able to speak freely about what goes on in America. And that is not something that the State Department, especially right now, wants any part of. They don't want any type of criticism, because when you're trying to gin up support for war, you have to have a unified front. You have to have everybody believing that the worst is yet to come, that this is only going to get worse. And right now, they're not getting the sense that everybody's on board. So now you have to take the next step, which is you're trying to kill innocent children. You have a bioweapons lab. They can't say weapons of mass destruction because they know Putin has nukes.
Well, and plus that's old. They need new marketing.
So they're trying to figure out a way to make this so. I mean, again, even the suggestion, and I don't give Biden credit for much, but the fact that whoever's in his ear, whether it's Bernie or who knows, who basically told him a no-fly zone is off the table. And as you probably saw, Congressman Kinzinger, who is now the darling of the liberal class because he stood up to Trump. I mean, listen, I respect Kinzinger for serving our country, but my God, that guy is literally trying to drag us into World War III with almost everything he puts out on social media. And there are hundreds of thousands of people who are eating that up. But what I always find interesting is the ones who are the loudest for war are the last ones that would ever pick up a weapon to defend this country.
And by the way, if you want to see who CNN's reporting, Colin, let's show CNN's joyride with NATO.
Yeah, well, so as evidence of just how important Belarus has become to Russia's operations inside Ukraine, we learned today on that NATO surveillance flight that NATO has actually been able to see on their radar on a fairly regular basis Russian-made aircraft entering into Ukrainian airspace via Belarus. They are using Belarus as a launch pad, essentially, for a lot of their military operations, a lot of their air operations inside Ukraine. And this is something that they have been seeing up to 10, 20 flights a day coming from Belarus into Ukraine. Take a listen to what one NATO technician told me today.
We do see activity coming from Belarus going into the Ukraine.
Do I think that CNN and these other outlets would drum us into a nuclear war for ratings? No, I don't think any of them, that's the first thing on their mind. Do I think that they have studied up on NATO? No, I do not. Do I think even if they knew that NATO has done some dastardly things around the world, they would report it? No. And do I think they like the ratings they're getting for this? Absolutely. Your thoughts?
I mean, listen, Wolf Blitzer always lets you know. I mean, think about all those jobs that war would create. I mean, how important that is.
Well, it's just that they're not going out of their way to verify things because they're not really actual journalists anymore. See, that's the real problem, is that these are people that are just being reporting, like you say, what is being told to them, and they don't second guess it. So then how is that in any way reliable? It's sort of like the thing with the Syrian, with the chemical attacks and all of the things that news is so quick to jump on without any real verification, even if it's not malintended. Like, even if they're not purposefully trying to do that, they certainly don't go out of their way to be, rational and reasonable. They definitely use it to their advantage. That's
right.
Yeah.
And I would also say, you don't really see questions at the press conferences for Biden, at the press conferences for Jen Psaki, on CNN. You don't really see questions asked about how do we start pulling back? How do we start unwinding this? You actually hear questions. An NBC News reporter was kind of with a naughty tone saying to Biden, are you doing enough? And you start seeing questions, and I read the article at the beginning that, more and more security experts are saying, is America doing enough? So the coverage, the narrative, and the questions seem to be pushing along more. And the only thing more that I could think of is a no-fly zone, which would create World War III. I think, whether you like it or not, I think Biden has done a whole lot, including banning Russian imports for oil. And I think Russia should pay a price, because at the beginning, we all agreed this is an illegal invasion. He's killing innocent people. Whether Russia has a legitimate grievance over NATO or not, they do. That does not condone war. But I'm just worried, because I've worked at Fox. I worked at MSNBC. I know how these networks work. They're not actively waking up in the morning thinking, how do I start nuclear war for ratings? But they're also not thinking, hey, maybe I need to temper my coverage to not escalate it. So those are those things. It doesn't need to be intentional.
Right.
It could be unintentional, but still reckless.
Yeah.
Well, JFK, to me, his moment as president was when he was able to convince a much more powerful Russia, when it was the USSR, and Khrushchev, to pull their missiles out of Cuba by agreeing to pull America's missiles out of Turkey.
Right.
Whatever the compromise is, if the compromise is Ukraine cannot join NATO, but that is ultimately what is going to end this conflict and allow all parties involved to save face. Zelensky looks like a hero. Putin looks like he got the job done. And we look like we brokered some type of a deal. You have to be thinking right now about what is the quickest way out of here. The quickest way out of here is not sending $600 billion in weapons to Ukraine. That is not the answer. In fact, if you're trying to start a war, that is one of the quickest ways to make it happen, because the two militaries, there is no comparison. And Putin has made it very clear that he's in it for the long haul. And if Zelensky thinks that he can just, listen, admirable, but this is not going to last. It can't last. And on top of that, we're seeing we're a country that cannot be inconvenienced for very long, very, very short period of time. Can we put up with high gas prices for a week? Maybe. A month? Not a chance.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.